Welcome back to the Vendetta Sports Media YouTube channel. In this video, we're going to do a quick little preview and breakdown of UFC 281 taking place Saturday from Madison Square Garden. I am joined by the great James Herrick and Jerry Walker. Boys, how are we doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Dude, chilling. I'm excited for Saturday, man. I can't wait. Jerry?
Oh yeah, feeling the same. I'm really bummed I'm gonna be working during it. Hopefully I get off in time with the late card start time. It'll be 9 o'clock Central Time here in Nashville. So fingers crossed I get off at least before those last three fights.
I mean, even if you're at work, you can find somebody on TikTok or YouTube kind of pirating this thing for free.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that what everybody does anyway?
Oh, exactly. I got my stream set up for it. It's just whether or not I'll actually have to be working or not, and hopefully by then I won't. So I'll just catch me sitting in the back of the restaurant, just watching some awesome fights, as they hopefully all should be.
Heck yeah, dude! It isn't November without a stacked MSG card. So I mean, I can't wait. We're gonna kind of just break down a couple questions for you guys. I'm gonna shoot James and Jerry some questions. We're just kind of round table a couple things to preview 281 this weekend. We're gonna be looking at the main card here. We're gonna be taking a look at this first fight. Dan Hooker's 1-4 in his last 5. I mean, no disrespect to him though. He's gone against some killers. He's gonna get some absolute monsters. He dropped down a weight class in this last fight. He was only there for a cup of coffee. Got rocked by Arnold Allen in the first round, making the jump back up. What does he need to do to kind of regain some momentum here and pick up a huge win for him?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing with Claudio Puelles is he's got to defend those takedowns. Puelles, isn't really that great of a striker. He does have some good tools, not tremendous. But if he can defend the takedowns, he's got a chance to outbox him. But if he can't defend those takedowns, he's going to have a lot in his hands with Puelles and his grappling. Really, really good knee bars and great submission artist. So if Dan Hooker can keep it on the feet, he's got a pretty good chance. That's a tall task, but he's got a chance, that's for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. If he can keep it on the feet. And I mean, looking at the last 4 guys who he's lost to, it was Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, Islam Makhachev, and Arnold Allen, who's looking like a star in that featherweight division. So it's not like he's fighting guys who aren't good, but it's just tough matchups, and Islam showed that wrestling and kind of was able to control him a bit in that one. I just think if there's any time for Dan Hooker to get back to the winning way, it's on a card with his team, multiple of his teammates. I think there's 3 other guys from City Kickboxing.
I think so. Yeah, I think a big stat that I kind of leaned on, and we released our UFC 281 previews and predictions for vendettasportsmedia.com, so be sure to check that out. I put in there under my preview, an interesting stat is Dan Hooker defends takedowns at a 78% clip. I think that should be something that his camp should look at going into this fight, because like James alluded to, he's looking to get this fight on the ground. I think that if he can stuff those takedowns, and if he does get down, if he can find a way to sprawl and get back up, get to the cage as quickly as possible to try to mitigate some of that damage, I think that's probably key for him to be winning this fight.
Yeah, and to add on to that a little bit, Puelles doesn't have tremendous takedowns. He's not some lights-out wrestler. Very, very good BJJ, but the going and getting the takedowns is the biggest struggle that he has in his grappling.
Yeah, that'll be something I guess you got to watch out for Hooker, is see how well he defends those takedowns, because, I mean, looking at when Israel Adesanya, his teammate, fought against Jan Blachowicz, he wasn't able to protect those takedowns, and that's something we've kind of seen with that general theme at City Kickboxing. But I'm sure Hooker, he knows what he's going up against in Puelles, and he'll know he has to defend those takedowns and can't let it get on the ground as much.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Jerry, he comes from one of the best camps in the entire world of City Kickboxing. They've got a game plan in place to try to mitigate some of the stuff that Claudio can do for sure. All right, we're going to move on to the next fight here between Frankie Edgar and Chris Gutierrez. Frankie Edgar, last fight in the UFC. The kid from Toms River, New Jersey's hanging it up, former UFC lightweight champion of the world. He's put on some incredible fights for the UFC, no doubt a Hall of Famer for sure. How do we see this last fight going? Does he go out on his sword, on his shield, or does he find a way to get one last big win in the UFC?
I mean, I would love to see him get another win in the UFC and end his career on a high note. But I mean, after that knockout against Chito Vera, the way it was and just the brutality of it, it's just, I kind of find it hard for a guy who's 10 years older, I believe, than Gutierrez to get back in the win column. And it seemed like in this week leading up, there's not a lack of motivation, but definitely he's not nearly as motivated as he once was to fight in the UFC.
Yeah, and I think that's true, especially when we see guys who are retiring, right? You're retiring for a reason. You're not retiring because all of a sudden you're not interested anymore. You're retiring because, you may not have those skills anymore. And I think especially with Frankie Edgar, he has a lot of the baseline skills that you need. Good footwork, good boxing, great wrestling. But when he was very young and very successful, it was the durability. And in the last couple fights, even though he has, been hit by powerful shots that would have put a lot of guys out, he didn't look as durable or as quick. So when you're looking at a fight with Gutierrez, I mean, that's something that concerns me at least. And especially with Gutierrez, he doesn't hit tremendously hard, but he can put it on you. He throws really good leg kicks as well. So it's kind of concerning that we've seen that durability dip too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Gutierrez is coming in with a boatload of confidence. I believe he's won 6 of his last 7, with the only exception being a draw. And it's not like he's going to decisions all that often. He's got a couple knockouts. His last fight was a TKO of Dana, like I'm not even going to try pronouncing the last name. I would mess this up, but he's a dangerous guy, and he can take advantage of Edgar's aging chin.
Mm-hmm. And that was, I believe, it was either a spinning elbow or a spinning back fist, one of the two. I don't remember off the top of my head. But that was a very good performance from him. So he right now is entering his prime. And another thing that I really like to look at in fights like this is there's a reason that the UFC is giving Chris Gutierrez Frankie Edgar. Somebody has to retire Frankie Edgar. And traditionally in these spots, we see the older veteran fight someone who the UFC is fairly confident in being able to go out there and beat them. Hence why Khamzat Chimaev was supposed to fight Nate Diaz in their last fight. So I think the UFC is onto something here, and they kind of are leading Frankie to a not so great outcome, as they traditionally do for guys who are on their way out. It's unfortunate, but that's kind of the UFC's MO, and it's the way they do business.
Yeah,
That does seem to be the theme as of late, doesn't it? I mean, like you said, you kind of touched on it with Diaz a little bit. I think that I'm sorry that I had to step away. Somebody ring the doorbell. The dog was going crazy. So I appreciate you guys just rolling through it. I don't know if I'm going to touch on something you guys have already touched on. I think Frankie Edgar's in for a bad matchup here. Genuinely, I think that this is the perfect opponent for Chris Gutierrez for sure. If he can get a highlight win over a guy like Frankie Edgar just to bolster that resume, that's going to do wonders for him. But on the other hand, if Frankie Edgar can go out with a big win like this, do you think that potentially sparks the thought? I know he's already come out this fight week and said, hey, this is it. But if he gets a show-stopping finish here, a show-stopping win, do we think that he might try to run it back maybe one more, if he just try to one more shot at a title maybe? Or is that kind of out of reach?
I mean, looking at his age, you would think not. But, I mean, look at Glover Teixeira when he won the belt. So I think he was, a year or two older than Frankie Edgar is now. But if he comes out and really impresses, then I could see him maybe being like, oh, shit, maybe I still have what it takes to go with these younger guys and keep competing in this division and maybe make another run. But I just don't really see it happening that way.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. I think there's probably about a 90% chance this is his last fight. But if anything unlocks that last 10% that changes his mind, it's going to be an impressive performance and an impressive win.
For sure. I think that, with the last couple of fights, Frankie Edgar hasn't been terribly kind to him. I think this is just going to be, unfortunately, just one last big fight for him on a huge card like this, one last great payday, but I don't think the result's going to be quite what the camp of Edgar is going to be wanting it to be. All right, moving on to a fight that fight fans have been clamoring for since this fight was announced. Now, you can tell by your guys' faces, everyone's excited for Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler. I'm just going to do one real basic, real quick question. Who needs a win more, do you think? Do you think Dustin Poirier needs a win more, or Michael Chandler? Jerry, let's go to you first.
I was going to say, I think Michael Chandler needs to win a little bit more. He does have a couple wins in the UFC, but he hasn't really fought any of these extremely top guys, especially as of late. His last win was Tony Ferguson, but before that, he lost to Charles Oliveira and Justin Gaethje, and that fight with Gaethje was a banger, and I could see this one going a very similar way. But I feel like Chandler, sitting, I think, 5th in the rankings right now, really needs to get this win to move up, because we all know what Dustin Poirier is capable of. And sure, he beat McGregor twice recently, but still, we know he's a killer, and he's looking as good as he ever has.
Yeah, at first, that's kind of what I was thinking. But I think it depends on how Michael Chandler loses, if he gets dominated or tries to wrestle and can't get the wrestling going, then that's one thing, and I think that's very bad for him. But if we see him lose in a fashion we saw him lose similarly to that Justin Gaethje fight, I don't think his stock drops at all. So I think it kind of depends on how Chandler looks. But if he looks bad, I think it is worse. But for Poirier, like you said, everyone knows what he is. He's one of the greatest lightweights of all time. And I think with Poirier too, an additional thing is he has an out of going to 170 as well. I think there's going to be interest to him jumping to 170 to fight someone like Colby Covington potentially. I think there's some more options for Poirier if he loses as well.
I think that one way I kind of look at this is I think almost Poirier needs to win more, only because he kind of fumbled the bag a little bit, picking up back-to-back wins over a guy like Conor McGregor. I think that he could have used that to shoot himself all the way. Like he should have been looking for those big fights. He should have been looking for a guy like Colby Covington at 170. And I do think that no matter which way this fight goes, I think we get to see that fight next. For Michael Chandler, kind of touching what James mentioned, it all depends on the way he loses. If it's like a first round knockout, super quick, I mean we don't foresee that happening. I don't think I can speak for all three of us because Michael Chandler is just too damn tough. But I think that in the fashion in which Michael Chandler potentially would lose this fight kind of goes to how his stock would be. I think that no matter what, we're in for a fight of year candidate. I think buckets of blood are going to be left in that octagon mat. I think that fans all over the world are going to want to watch this fight back over and over and over again because we are in for a barn burner for sure. And
correct me if I'm wrong, this is a 3-round fight, isn't it?
Correct.
I think that'll be interesting to see what Poirier does because his last 5 fights have all been 5-rounders, and a couple of them have gone the distance at least. But it'll be interesting to see that because I think Chandler's only had 1, maybe 2 5-round fights since joining the UFC, while he has much more experience going in those 3-round wars with like Justin Gaethje and letting it all go out, letting it all on the line, and just going out and putting on a banger as we all expect it to be on Saturday night.
Yeah, that 3-round aspect swings it a lot further in Chandler's favor because, I mean, he can go out there and steal 2 rounds of a 3-round fight a lot easier than he could 3 rounds of a 5-round fight. Because if those in a potential 5-round fight, rounds 4 and 5 would more than likely both go to Poirier.
Absolutely. You all bring up some great points. Now moving on to the co-main event for the Women's Strawweight Championship, we have defending champion Carla Esparza versus Zhang Weili. Do I have that right, gentlemen?
I to be honest with you, I do so much research. This is one of my biggest pet peeves. I do so much research trying to get Zhang Weili's name correct. And if you look at the UFC, they have it like the UFC has it one way, and then like Google and Tapology and SureDog have it the opposite. Mm-hmm. So I don't know whether it's Zhang Weili or Weili Zhang because everything has it listed differently. So
just a little consistency would be nice.
Yeah, all I want.
We'll go with whichever way you guys prefer. I'm sure that everyone uses it both ways anyway. You guys can roll with what you want. I think that we're going to look more into Carla Esparza here because on Verdict released a tweet today that said Carla Esparza is the heaviest underdog in Verdict history. If you guys don't know, watching at home, Verdict is an open scoring format app which you can download and judge fights as they're happening, and you can see live scoring from around the world. If you don't have it, I would highly recommend downloading it. Not an ad, but we're interested as well. I think the percentage is 86% to Zhang Weili for this fight, so nobody's picking Carla Esparza. What does Carla Esparza have to do in this fight, guys, to earn a little respect and maybe steal some rounds and potentially walk out of Madison Square Garden with her title?
I mean, do you want to go, James, or you want me to go?
It doesn't make a difference to me.
Go ahead. I was at the UFC 274 in Arizona. It was right before my graduation. Got to see Carla Esparza fight Rose Namajunas. And I think if Carla wants to beat Weili, because Weili is an insanely good striker, she used to do something similar to that Rose fight where keep the distance, don't let the striking get at you, and take advantage of getting a couple takedowns, kind of control the ground game, and just run it out and beat the clock more or less. Because I think we all agree that was kind of a snooze fest, that fight with Rose. But I think that's a way she can win. Is it doesn't have to be pretty, doesn't have to be exciting. She just has to do the gritty, grindy stuff and take advantage of Weili.
Yeah, I think on the feet, Carla Esparza can't get caught in the middle in like a boxing range. She either needs to be all the way out of range, so she's not getting hit with kicks, she's not getting hit with punches, or she has to be all the way in the clinch and getting takedowns. She's got to get takedowns on the ground. She should probably focus on simply just controlling position and winning that round. If you get one takedown, you cannot, because Weili is not really an easy person to take down or hold down because she's so strong. And I kind of agree with the average pick here of Carla's not going to be able to do it. But if she wants to do it, she has to focus on being able to control it once it gets to the ground, stay on top, and maybe you can catch Weili as she's trying to get up. Maybe you can get a slick back take. Maybe you can get a rear naked choke, something like that. But I think it's get one takedown and win the round with your one takedown, and either don't take risks or see if you can take the back or something like that. But it's going to be hard.
Yeah, go ahead.
Something that kind of stood out to me just looking and like researching this fight is the last 4 fights for Weili have been 2 against Joanna and 2 against Rose. So the last time she really fought someone, as both of those are very much strikers, was Jessica Andrade back in 2019. So it's very much a different style that she'll be facing this time around, as Carla Esparza is more of a wrestling or jiu-jitsu fighter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you guys both hit nail right on the head. I think that the biggest thing, she's got to make it ugly. This has to be another boring fight. This has to be another. I mean, the fans are going to hate it. You'll hear the boos all over. But if she can manage to secure those takedowns, like James was saying, kind of own on top control a little bit, she doesn't have to do a ton of damage either. Just as long as she's being active, right? Because that's what kind of refs look for. Is you can secure the takedown, that's all well and good. If you're just going to lay there and not be active, most refs are going to stand you up pretty quickly. That's where Esparza could be in a bit of danger if she's not terribly active, if she secures those takedowns. I think that a lot of work in the clinch, pushing her up against the cage, maybe a little dirty boxing, then trying to shoot for a takedown. If she can land it, I think that she has a shot at maybe grinding out some rounds. But like James was alluding to, if she's kind of in the pocket and she's in the boxing range, she is completely outmatched.
Yeah, and a couple more things I'll add to it is the difference between Rose and Weili is Rose in her corner invited that style of fight because they didn't want to get taken down. I don't think that Weili is going to have that same mindset. I think we'll see Weili if that becomes Carla's game plan is to wait it out on the outside. I think Weili will pressure a lot more than Rose did. And another thing is that Weili's training over, I believe she's at Fight Ready with Henry Cejudo. So if anyone can teach you how to defend a takedown, if anyone can help you in this type of fight, that's one of the top places you want to be right now.
Absolutely. All right, I have 2 questions when we go into our main event of UFC 281, which is the champ, Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira. I've got a real quick question that I kind of thought of this morning with all of the sort of controversy surrounding the weigh-ins. Alex Pereira made weight on his first attempt, but he weighed in 5-10 minutes before the buzzer. Do we have any concerns at all that it seemed like he was kind of struggling to make weight there, or is that not really a big deal?
I lean 50-50 on it because it shows me a couple things. One is one of the things that I think really stands out to me in this fight is how much bigger Pereira is going to be. And I think that kind of emphasizes that with how much he struggled to make weight in comparison to Izzy. So I think that that's one thing it shows me, but also at the same time, I don't particularly like fighters when they're struggling to make weight. That does concern me. But I think if you're looking at Izzy's game plan, if he's not looking to land a lot of heavy strikes, the weight cut may not be as big of an issue for Pereira because his chin might not be tested as much if Izzy's just landing the jab and the leg kick, which may be a possibility. So I lean towards no, but I can see how it would be concerning.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think it's not quite going to be that big of a deal when the fight actually gets going, but it is a little bit concerning. And I mean, we saw the pictures of him standing next to Glover Teixeira and blanking on the other guy's name.
Reyes.
Reyes, that's right. And they're both light heavyweights, and he made him look small. And as a middleweight, that's a lot of weight he would have to cut. And it could end up taking a toll on him. He could be a little more exhausted, a little more dehydrated going into it. But I'm sure his team knows what they're doing with those 2 guys as well in the past. And I'm sure he'll be ready to go. And he'll be significantly bigger than Izzy. So if Izzy does try to bring the fight to him, it could be a quick night maybe. But I just think Izzy will be able to keep it a distance at times, like you said, James, and then the weight cut won't really matter all that much.
All right, we're going to go around the horn for our last question here. I want you guys to give me one key to this fight for your other guy. One key to have Israel Adesanya picking up the victory, or one key for Alex Pereira picking up the victory. We're going to go to James first.
I will go with, for Izzy, I will say kind of a 2-1. I'll go defense, but the specific thing that I'm looking at is the movement. So Izzy is going to have to avoid the big strikes from Pereira. And if he can have his good movement and his good footwork, I think he can. And I think he'll be a lot better at doing things like cutting off the cage, circling around the cage. I don't think anyone is as good as Israel Adesanya at controlling the cage and understanding where he's at in the cage. And I think that his experience in MMA compared to Pereira's will help him a lot in that. And then on the outside, just controlling range and like helping him land jabs while he's staying out of danger, helping him land leg kicks while he stays out of danger. So I think movement and with a defensive focus would be my key for Izzy.
Yeah, I'm kind of agreeing with you on that. He's got to keep his distance a bit. Typically, I feel like we've seen Adesanya with a significant reach advantage on some of his opponents. Going into this fight, he just has a 1-inch reach advantage on Pereira. So keeping the distance will be very important because I would say, if you guys agree or not, Pereira is probably the more powerful puncher. But it's just Izzy was always a perfect striker, a precision striker where he finds the targets and hits them. And it's just over time wears down opponents, which I think he'll have to do. He'll have to keep his distance and kind of like what he said is his plan, jab, leg kick, and move out of the way, and then just keep circling around and keep Pereira moving.
I think you guys both picked keys for Adesanya. I will try to think of one for Pereira. I think good.
I was going to say, I have one for Pereira if you don't have one, but.
We'll go back to you, and then we'll call it there. I think that my biggest thing for Alex Pereira in this fight is patience. I think that it's very – because, like, both you guys touched on it. He's got massive power in both hands. He could shut the lights out at any given moment. He has a significant strength advantage in this fight over Israel Adesanya because he carries all that weight. Fighters are very tempted when they land that one shot and they rock somebody to just rush right in. That's a very dangerous game. And we're going against as skilled a guy as Israel Adesanya, who has been tested before and has come back and showed resolve and things like that. I think that the biggest thing for Pereira is not to rush in there, not to get too crazy, because we've seen wild exchanges in the UFC before where a guy's rocked, but he's still throwing and rocks the guy who rocked him. And that's kind of what you want to avoid. You want to pick and choose your spots as well, just so you don't rush in, you don't get clipped with something, and then boom, the night's over.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the opposite for me for my thinking of Alex Pereira. Not that he has to rush in after getting the initial hit, but I think he needs to put a bit more pressure on Izzy and not really let Izzy dance around and move around all over the ring. He needs to control the tempo of the fight and control the distance, because up close, it'll be a lot harder for the Stylebender to get his shots off than it would be Pereira with his quick left hook and just all the power punches he has.
James, any final thoughts?
I'll add one thing on Pereira. Obviously, I did the film study on Pereira, so I'm up to my nose in ideas about his game. And one thing that stood out to me that I don't see that's talked about a lot is his Muay Thai clinch. Now, against Bruno Silva, he was able to get in the clinch because Bruno Silva really didn't want to be standing with him. And every time he gets in that position, he has some of the best knees from that Muay Thai clinch. And you see them in that fight. They really wear on Bruno Silva, and they make him tired and they make him quick. And when Pereira throws these knees from the clinch, he'll throw like 5 in a row, hard and quick. And they're very damaging. And I think in this fight, I think if Pereira can push it up against the cage, control Izzy up against the cage for a second, and chip away with some knees, maybe make him tired a little bit. That'll take a chunk out of that movement and Izzy's ability to move. I think that might be one thing that people don't really see coming that could play a very big factor in this fight.
Yeah, and I do, if you guys don't mind me asking one more question that I just thought of, and it's been a talking point for this entire main event, the 2 kickboxing fights that happened in 2016, 2017. Do you think that has any implication in this fight at all of like what's happened in the past? Do you think Izzy might be maybe annoyed that all the talk that he lost twice, he's going to rush in and go after Pereira? Or do you think Pereira is kind of a little complacent because he has beat Izzy twice?
I think Israel Adesanya does a great job with mind games as it is. He is so good at getting in his opponent's heads and just like staying there rent free, no problem. I like to think that he's got the confidence enough within himself to kind of block out the noise, and he can just kind of tunnel his way in this fight. I mean, he came out this week and said that he's had some grand entrances in the UFC. I think his last fight was the one where he had the Undertaker in the urn, and then in Australia, I believe he had the whole dancing thing. So he loves to do the pageantry when his entrances. He's not doing anything for this fight. He's locked in. He's focused on this fight. I think that's a valid thought to think that that's going to be living in the back of Izzy's head, that he's got to get this win back. But I think that the confidence the champ has enough in himself, he can kind of block all that out and just focus on this one fight and not worry about the other two.
I think this might be the hardest question that we've posed all day because I really struggled to evaluate that. And I think on one hand, it's good for Izzy to feel that power because you can feel that power. And now I don't want to get caught with it again. So I think it may be advantageous to have felt that in the actual fight. And I think that may help him game plan and dictate the way he fights here, and maybe he plays it a little bit safer. So I think that may be a potential aspect of that. And I don't really get a good read on what Pereira's thinking on that same side, because maybe he's thinking, I beat him twice, this is going to be easy work, and then he's caught by surprise. That could be very bad. And maybe that's not what he's thinking at all. I don't really know. But those were just some, from the mental aspect, some thoughts that I had, but I really don't have a strong read on how that's going to affect the fight.
One thing worth noting as well, and Jerry brought up the two previous kickboxing fights, MMA fights with 4-ounce gloves. That should be something we should kind of look into as well, potentially, is that you're gonna feel those punches a lot more than you did when you were kickboxing.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's definitely going to hurt a lot more than when they were kickboxing. And just MMA in general, that's not just kicking and punching and elbows. It's kind of, you have the clinch part of it. You have the wrestling part. If it does get to the ground, I don't particularly think this fight will, but it's a lot more going on. And I think Adesanya has not perfected everything, but I think he learned a lot from that loss against Jan Blachowicz, where he was just out wrestled the whole time and now knows, and he's even more of an all-rounded MMA fighter.
Absolutely. All right, guys, this has been your UFC 281 preview for our YouTube channel at Vendetta Sports Media. If you liked the video, please give us a like on this video. If you have not already, please go ahead and press that subscribe button and ring that bell so you don't miss any more content coming out of the Vendetta Sports Media YouTube channel. With James Herrick and Jerry Walker and my guy Jack Abrams behind in the booth, I am Garrett Burroughs, and we'll see you next time.